right at near the time, so we're going to wait a few minutes to let Lanier get here.
Yes.
That way we'll have we got a seat for him. Boy.
Well, then,
Oh, there he is.
oh, not much.
Yeah.
What with you? What's going on? Well, any of us working.
Praise the Lord. There he goes. Not bad. 11:01. That's pretty good.
Man of the hour.
We didn't hear it. You're tired.
He even had time to refresh my coffee.
Good to see you, Rob.
I was thinking about that. I said, when we should have his coffee ready.
We'll get started if we can get Roy to sit down.
He got the toast.
That's okay.
Did you meet? Great.
First, well, before we get started, I just want to thank everyone for being here, especially the commission members, and especially those commission members that are not retired. Like I am. I know it takes some effort. So we will call this meeting to order. This is the meeting of the Alabama Environmental Management Commission. We do have a quorum. And our first item is the consideration of the minutes of the meeting that we held on December the 10th, 2021. I'll entertain a motion for the commission regarding the minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes of December 10th, 2021 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 2 is the report from our director, who is on the phone today. So,
I am here, and good morning to everybody. My apologies for giving this report remotely, but I was exposed to someone who tested positive for COVID, so I thought you all would probably prefer this to be remote rather than in person. But good morning to everybody, and to the others in the room who are joining the meeting. This is the third meeting of the Environmental Management Commission for fiscal year 22. Today's report will focus on the latest developments regarding a number of current issues important to the department. First will be an update on several internal ADEM initiatives involving our FY23 general fund budget, the Mobile Field Office, our major software systems upgrade, a review of our Telework program, and an update to our beneficial use rules. Next, I'll report on some recent extraordinary federal funding for drinking water and wastewater infrastructure and how that affects the department. And we'll have some new information on the progress EPA is making in the cleanup of certain properties in the North Birmingham 35th Avenue area that I'll share with you. Finally, I'll review the current situation with 2 environmental contaminants of national importance, coal combustion residuals, and per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS. That's a lot to cover. Jason, would you click the first slide up there? All right, we'll begin with the department's fiscal year 23 budget. Jason, can you go to the next slide? ADEM has 3 sources of funding. Fees from regulated industries, about 54% of our budget. Federal funding through EPA, about 40% of our budget. And the Alabama General Fund, about 6% of our budget. The regulated industry fee schedule has been the same since 2016. Federal funding has been roughly the same since 2010, but there may be a small increase in fiscal year 2023. They have not adopted the 22 budget yet, so 23 is still out there. The department has received a general fund appropriation of $4 million per year for the last 3 years, and the governor's proposed FY23 general fund budget submitted to the Alabama legislature maintains the $4 million appropriation. The governor's proposed budget also includes a one-time supplemental appropriation requested by the department to defer part of the increased cost of the Mobile field office due to inflation during the 11-year process to close out the Restore Act funding. More about the Mobile field office in just a moment. Discussions with the Alabama Senate and House leadership have been ongoing to obtain the full one-time request of $3 million. Okay, Jason, if you move on to the slide with the Mobile field office and lab. All right, now to our planned Mobile field office and lab. Next slide. Following the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in 2010, settlement was reached with BP to fund numerous projects in the coastal states impacted by the spill, including Alabama. The Federal Restore Act was enacted to distribute the funds. We began developing a plan for a new Mobile field office and laboratory in 2010. ADEM submitted a $5.9 million request to the Restore Council for the badly needed new field office and laboratory in Mobile. The amount requested was based on a 2010 projected cost. The request was eventually awarded. Now, if you fast forward nearly 11 years, after navigating the federal bureaucratic Restore Act maze, several lengthy state procurement requirements, and several design delays, often related to COVID-19, on December the 15th, 2021, the department received 4 bids from pre-qualified bidders to construct the 15,200 square foot field office and laboratory in Mobile. The 4 bids ranged from $11 million even to $11.6 million. Bids reflect the 57% inflation in non-residential construction costs since the original 2010 cost estimate, along with additional projected inflation amounts bidders factored into their bids to cover the roughly 18-month period before construction is complete. Jason, would you put up that slide showing the picture of the office? This is an architectural rendering of the proposed facility. It reflects a contemporary institutional design with a connection to the region of the state that will be served by that office. The curved front has a change in the look as the sunlight and shadows change throughout the day. The design seeks to reflect the dynamics of the hydrologic cycle. The design incorporates elements such as rubber-modified asphalt using scrap tire material in paved areas, ground swales, and other features that help us practice what we preach in environmental responsibility. Okay, if you go to that next slide, Jason, it's the same as the prior one. The $11 million winning bid with $5.9 million in Restore Act funding leaves approximately a $5 million funding shortfall. The department has several options to source the $5 million, so the project will proceed on schedule. A one-time general fund appropriation has been requested. An inflation adjustment to the $5.9 million Restore Act grant has also been requested. Internal departmental funding can cover some portion of the shortfall. And finally, if there's any remaining shortfall, it will be funded by borrowing funds, such as was done when our main office and laboratory were constructed. The notice to proceed is scheduled for mid-February, with construction anticipated to be complete in 18 months. Future reports will track our progress. Okay, Jason, if you move to software upgrades. Another internal ADEM initiative to report to you on is our computer software update that we began planning for in 2018 and kicked off in 2019. Next slide there, Jason. This is a major upgrade that will build on our existing leadership in automation. As you're no doubt aware, the department was probably the most automated environmental agency in the nation before this upgrade. The NPDS, underground storage tank, recycling, several other land division applications have gone live internally and externally. Glitches were minimal, and all of those have been resolved. The solid waste, medical waste, and RCRA notification programs are next, and they're well underway. The final applications will be air, concentrated animal feeding operations, several other land division programs. We're on schedule and on budget with an anticipated completion date for the entire system in early calendar year 2023. This next generation upgrade will enhance effectiveness and efficiency for many years to come, which will help us maintain high performance with exceptionally low funding. Okay, Jason, would you move on to telework? For several years before the COVID-19 pandemic, the department was contemplating implementing a telework program as a means to attract and retain personnel. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic allowed us the opportunity to do a full-scale teleworking experiment. The experiment had several challenges, but in large part due to our high level of automation and the history of our personnel in rising to the occasion of emergencies, the experiment was very successful. If you move on to that next slide, Jason. Because of that successful experiment, we've implemented a provisionally permanent telework program. The program will be permanent, providing performance does not suffer. Eligibility for telework is based on suitability of the job and the individual. Approximately 55% of our personnel telework 1 or 2 days per week. Telework days are assigned to maintain continuity of access to in-person interaction with regulated industry and the public at ADEM offices. A formal agreement with each teleworking employee is in place that includes provisions such as dedicated workspace at home, maintaining proper computer communication and security systems, a distraction-free work environment, liabilities, waivers, and the like. The annual performance appraisal for teleworking personnel will review compliance with the teleworking agreement, also assess productivity of the time spent teleworking, review the telephone and email availability while teleworking, and assess supervisory oversight while teleworking. It appears ADEM has the most advanced telework program in Alabama state government. Continuation of the telework program for each individual and the department as a whole is dependent on the success of those teleworking. Okay, moving on to beneficial use rules. Next is an update on our beneficial use rule. Jason, if you'd click over to the next slide with several bullets on it. As was the case with most states, ADEM historically relied on EPA to regulate the land application of biosolids and other beneficial use products in Alabama. Several highly publicized events highlighted the shortcomings of relying on EPA, so in 2019, the department began developing a program to provide state control of these materials. The process involved obtaining input from numerous interested parties and the eventual adoption of a beneficial use rule in 2020. Much has been learned since that initial rule became effective, and we anticipate bringing an updated beneficial rule for your consideration at either the April or June Commission meeting, depending on the time needed to address any comments from the public. The updates to the beneficial use regulations will provide increased testing for pollutants and pathogens, tighter land application requirements, improved notification requirements, improved odor control, and other provisions to enhance the department's ability to enforce safeguards for property owners, residents, and the environment. The draft rule is currently out for public comment. Okay, Jason, if you move to the drinking water and wastewater infrastructure funding, leading slide. Drinking water and wastewater infrastructure around the nation and in Alabama has deteriorated and is in need of funding for upgrades. Next slide, Jason. The state of Alabama was allocated approximately $2.1 billion under the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, that was signed into law on March the 11th, 2021. The governor and the Alabama legislature have acted to provide $225 million to upgrade drinking water and wastewater infrastructure in Alabama. On November 15, 2021, the $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure law, or BIL, was signed by the president. The estimated funding for drinking water and wastewater infrastructure in Alabama is $765 million over a 5-year period. The first year total for Alabama is approximately $137 million. The BIL funding is broken into 3 categories: upgrading physical drinking water and wastewater systems, the replacement of drinking water lead service lines, and controlling contaminants of concern, which is primarily PFAS compounds. The Alabama legislature tasked ADEM with managing the ARPA funds. The bipartisan infrastructure law requires the state revolving fund programs in each state to manage those funds, which in Alabama means ADEM. The process for both ARPA and BIL funds will involve determining what the needs of the 1,100 systems in Alabama are, prioritizing those needs, overseeing the distribution of the funds, and finally, assuring the funds are used for the intended purposes. There will be special emphasis on underserved communities, especially in the Black Belt areas. Together, the 2 funding programs will require ADEM to administer approximately $1 billion of new grants and loans over the next 5 years. It will be a challenging task, and future reports will provide you updates on these activities as we go. Okay, Jason, if you'd move to North Birmingham. For a number of years, both the Commission and the Department have been keenly interested in dealing with the soil contamination in the 35th Avenue area of North Birmingham. Move on to the next slide there, Jason. The Collegeville, Claremont, and Harriman Park neighborhoods near 35th Avenue in North Birmingham are impoverished areas where elevated levels of several contaminants exist that are the cause for great concern for those residents of those communities. Fill material brought in many years ago to mitigate flooding is the source of the contamination. EPA has preemptively exercised its regulatory authority to oversee management of the area since the mid-1980s. Although ADEM does not control the investigation and cleanup, the Commission and the Department have sought to have the cleanup addressed in a timely manner. EPA tested 1,981 individual residential sites for the contaminants. 658, or 33.2% of the sites tested, had contamination at or above the removal management level, or RML. In April 2021, EPA reported removal of the contaminated fill material was approximately 80% complete, with an anticipated completion date within 2 years. In response to a December 2021 inquiry from ADEM, EPA reports that it has cleaned up 620, or 94.2%, of the 658 contaminated sites. The removal action approach, rather than the extraordinarily lengthy National Priorities List, or NPL, process, has resulted in a cleanup that ADEM anticipates will be completed in 2022. It's likely cleanup would not yet be underway, much less nearing completion, if the NPL process were employed. All of this progress is indeed good news for those in the Collegeville, Fairmont, and Harriman Park neighborhoods. Today's final two updates involve coal combustion residuals, or CCR, and per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, abbreviated PFAS. The last CCR and PFAS update at a commission meeting was about a year ago. Since then, there have been several activities of note. Jason, would you put up that coal combustion residual slide? Starting with CCR, often referred to as coal ash. Move on to the next slide, Jason. The concern is with unlined impoundments containing coal ash material where contaminants can be released to groundwater. Coal ash management is an issue both nationally and here in Alabama. If you would put up this next slide with the map on it. Wet coal ash was disposed of at 9 sites in Alabama. This slide shows as red dots the 9 sites in Alabama where CCR had been deposited. ADEM took enforcement action for groundwater contamination against the operators of many of these coal ash impoundments following the discovery of the contamination in 2018. Wet coal ash is no longer produced or deposited in Alabama. So if you go back to that next slide, it's the same as the prior slide. In 2018, state CCR rules were promulgated and have been updated twice. Under the state CCR rules, permits are to be issued for the closure of impoundments at 8 of those 9 sites. 6 sites have had permits issued. The permit for 1 site is pending and will be final within the next few weeks. The remaining permit is nearing the end of the drafting stage and is scheduled to be completed in 2022. The one legacy site closed prior to the effective date of the federal and state CCR rules. It was closed prior to that, so it is not currently subject to permitting requirements. No other state is as far along on permitting. The next step will be developing permit conditions for the remediation of contaminated groundwater at each of the sites. In December 2021, ADEM submitted a package to EPA to become the 4th state granted partial approval of its CCR program. Full approval of Alabama's CCR program must wait until the federal program is final in order to meet the requirement that our program be as protective as the federal program. Full approval of our CCR program will allow the regulated community, EPA, and the courts to defer to state regulatory oversight rather than relying on citizen lawsuits to enforce CCR regulations. Jason, if you move to the PFAS slide. Our final update topic is per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, abbreviated as PFAS, which is an issue throughout the nation and here in Alabama. You'll move to the next slide, Jason. The number of the 5,000 members of this family of chemicals are extremely stable which causes them to be persistent in the environment. Because of that stability, and because they are used in so many applications, they are widely present throughout our environment and have a tendency to accumulate in humans. Drinking water is the primary pathway for accumulation in humans. Despite more than a decade of concern over the possible adverse effects of the accumulation of the chemicals in humans and extensive ongoing research, EPA estimates they are still a couple of years away from developing maximum contaminant level, or MCL, standards for drinking water. In the past year, testing methods and control strategies have been developed by EPA, which is helpful. Here in Alabama, ADEM is proactive in addressing PFAS, though without federal PFAS standards, we must use means other than traditional enforcement tools. 3 of the actions are: first, testing of all public drinking water systems in Alabama for the presence of a panel of PFAS compounds in finished drinking water. This allows us to pinpoint where PFAS are present and to act quickly when drinking water health standards are developed. Fortunately, as reported earlier, thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure law, substantial funds are now available to reduce PFAS in those drinking water systems where PFAS have been detected. Another action to address PFAS here in Alabama is in-stream water quality and fish tissue monitoring for selected water courses where there's an increased likelihood of PFAS being present. This gives us an early indicator of future problems and helps us identify potential sources. In the third action, the department is continuing to require extensive discharge monitoring reporting, control measures, and health studies from the PFAS manufacturer in Alabama. Information related to each of these actions is available on the ADEM website. In closing, I'm pleased to notify you of a significant award the department received several weeks ago. Water Professionals International, for 50 years the premier organization in this field, recognized ADEM as having the best drinking water and wastewater operator certification programs in the entire United States. You've often seen and heard the metrics showing the high performance of drinking water and wastewater systems in Alabama. The ADEM operator certification program plays a crucial role in achieving those results. Is Jim Graciano there? Jim, are you there?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Jim Graciano is the certification program manager. Jim, would you make yourself known along with whatever of your staff happen to be there with you? Did you bring your award to show to everybody? A little show and tell?
Well, it's out in the front of our conference room, and you can see it on the table. We've got the
Okay.
Alabama, and we've got a team effort here. So I brought Elizabeth Bozeman and Tom Madigan, 2 of our folks in operator certification. So thank you.
Okay. Well, congratulations to all of you. Job well done. Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes today's report. If there are any questions, I'll be pleased to answer them.
Any questions of the director? Everybody shaking their head? No. So we have no questions. We thank you, and we wish you the best of success and staying healthy.
Okay, well, I plan to be stay healthy. I'm currently healthy, and being there in person for April.
Very good. Good deal. Thanks. We'll move on to agenda item number 4, which is the consideration of Mary, you're supposed to punch me. I skipped agenda item number 3. And there's a reason I skipped it. Because it's the report from the commission chair, and I have no report. That's why I skipped it. There we go. All right, let's start over. Agenda item number 4, consideration of adoption of proposed amendments to ADEM Administrative Code Division 335-6, Volume 2, the Water Quality Program Regulations, Underground Storage Tank, acronym UST. Call for the department. Mr. Cobb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Commissioners. I'm Stephen Cobb, Chief of the Land Division, and I'm here today to recommend that the Commission adopt amendments to the Department's Division 6, Chapter 15, Technical Standards for corrective action requirements and financial responsibility for owners and operators of underground storage tanks. Revisions to this chapter of the ADEM Administrative Code are being proposed to update and clarify the requirements for technical standards, corrective action plans, preliminary investigations, pre-product removal, investigative derived waste, operation and maintenance of systems, including spill prevention equipment, and release detection, and to make updates to analytical methods. The proposed revisions to the technical standards were the subject of a public comment period, which ran from November 21, 2021 to January 6, 2022. Public hearing was held at the department on January 6, 2022. No oral comments were received during the hearing, and no written comments were received during the public comment period. The revised regulations are presented to you today for your consideration, and the department asks that the Commission adopt the proposed changes to the Department's Division 6, Chapter 15 regulations. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions of the department? We'll then entertain a motion from the Commission regarding the proposed amendments to the Water Quality Program Regulations for underground storage tanks.
Move to adopt the proposed amendments as presented.
Second.
I have a motion to adopt and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
I feel like we need to have some Jeopardy music. Final Jeopardy. We'll now move on to agenda item number 5, which is the consideration of adoption of proposed amendments to ADEM Administrative Code Division 335-7, which is the Water Supply Program Regulation.
Commissioners, good morning. I'm Jeff Kitchens, Chief of the Water Division. For your consideration today are proposed revisions to Division 7 of the ADEM Administrative Code, which are the Public Water Supply Regulations. Revisions to Rules 335-7-4-.04 and 335-7-4-.07 add the requirements for new water systems and existing water systems with a history of noncompliance, respectively, to develop an asset management plan. These revisions will allow the department to implement new federal requirements under the America's Water Infrastructure Act, also known as AWIA, which directs primacy agencies to incorporate asset management into their capacity development programs. Revisions to Rule 335-7-7-.04 adds more prescriptive requirements to the existing requirement that water systems inspect their finished water storage tanks at regular intervals and repair deficiencies in a timely manner. The proposed revisions are consistent with industry standards and other state primacy agencies. Notice was published on November 21, 2021, and the public hearing was held on January 10, 2022. No comments were received during the public hearing, but written comments were received during the public comment period from 2 individuals regarding the finished water storage tank maintenance rule revisions. After consideration of the comments, the department has proposed 2 revisions to the original proposed rules for the reasons noted in the reconciliation statement you have before you. Additional comments have been addressed and no additional changes are proposed. We respectfully ask for your favorable consideration of the proposed rules with the revisions noted, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Kitchen?
So you guys did read the specific comments and acted upon it?
That is correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Very well, we'll entertain a motion from the commission regarding proposed amendments to the water supply program regulations.
Move to adopt the amendments as presented.
Have a motion to adopt and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting said proposed amendments signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item number 6 is consideration of adoption of proposed amendments to ADEM Administrative Code Division 335-16, which is the dry cleaning trust fund program regulation. Call on the department, Mr. Cobb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm also here today to recommend that the Commission adopt amendments to the Department's Division 16 Dry Cleaning Trust Fund Program regulations. These amendments propose changes to Chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 of those regulations. Revisions to these chapters of the ADEM Administrative Code Division 16 are being proposed to add language regarding environmental covenants and to update references to other departmental regulations. The proposed revisions were the subject of a public comment period which ran from November 21st, 2021 to January 6, 2022. The public hearing was held at the department on January 6th. No oral comments were received during the hearing and no written comments were received during the public comment period. So therefore, the revised regulations are presented to you today for your consideration. The department asks that the Commission adopt the proposed changes to the department's Division 16 Dry Cleaning Trust Fund Program regulations, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions of Mr. Cobb? Thank you. Entertain a motion then from the Commission regarding the proposed amendments to the dry cleaning trust fund program regulations.
Move to approve the dry cleaning trust fund program regulation amendments as presented.
Have a motion? Have a second? Any further discussion? Therefore, we'll call for the question. All those in favor of approving the amendments to the proposed amendments to the dry cleaning trust fund program regulations as submitted, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Didn't know that February was Administrative Code Amendment Month. move on to agenda item number 7, which is consideration of the hearing officer's recommendation of dismissal based on the voluntary motion to dismiss filed by the petitioner. Petitioner appealed that certain action appearing in an email dated February 21, 2021 from ADEM to Jet Pep Incorporated regarding the retail gasoline facility owned by KEN and the underground storage tanks owned by Jet Pep Incorporated, located in Hoover, Jefferson County. This is signified by UST number 15-10-05 and facility ID 12740-073-001475. I'll entertain a motion from the commission regarding the hearing officer's recommendation of dismissal.
Move to adopt the hearing officer's recommendations of dismissal.
Have a motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adopt the hearing officer's recommendation for dismissal. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 8 has to do with the Greater Birmingham Alliance to Stop Pollution, known as GASP, petitioner versus ADEM, Respondent and Advanced Etowah Choice Fabricators, and Pilgrim's Pride Corporation, interveners. Agenda item number 8 is acknowledgement for the record of petitioner GASP Inc.'s withdrawal of its request for the hearing. The petitioner requested a hearing regarding the air permits issued by the department to Pilgrim's Pride Corporation for the company's Gadsden Animal Feed Ingredients Plant in Gadsden. In December 2021, Pilgrim's Pride voluntarily surrendered these air permits back to the department, and as a result of that, the petitioner has withdrawn its request for hearing. Therefore, the chair acknowledges for the record petitioner GASP Inc.'s withdrawal of its request for hearing. Therefore, we have nothing to sign. Do we have any other business that needs to be brought before the commission today? I don't believe we've had anyone signed up to speak. Robert had some business. Therefore, our next meeting is scheduled for, commission meeting is April 8th. Do we have any known conflicts? Try to avoid any exposure to positive tested people. So, therefore, we'll meet on April the 8th. And I'll now entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Have a motion, have a second to adjourn. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you for being here. Appreciate everyone. We are adjourned.